07 Commanders. In this video I'm going to show you how to create time trials for EDCopilot. So I've got myself at a base that I like the look of. It's well lit, it's got an interesting layout. You can see my SRV parked on this raised platform in the bottom right, which is where I'm going to have my start line, and then I'll have people drive behind those two barrels where you can see all the tire tracks, and then onto those two buildings with the sloping sides, through both of those, and then basically back round behind the barrels and back here to the finish line, which is also going to be on this platform. So to do that, what I need to do is create a route, and I use a utility called SRV Tracker to do that. SRV Tracker was written by Crank Larson for the Elite Racers to fulfill a pretty similar purpose of creating time trials and allowing us to track routes for races and things. So I'll include in the video description where to find SRV Tracker and how to download it. So let's jump straight into using it. So go to my desktop, and here's my shortcut. So I launch SRV Tracker, and this little window pops up. The first thing you're probably going to want to check the first time you use it is open the settings. And in here you have, on this monitoring tab, there's a status.json location. This will typically be something like this: C users, your username, saved games, Frontier Developments, Elite Dangerous. And in that folder, you know you've got the right place, because in that folder will be this file, along with a bunch of other JSON files. There'll be status.json. And this is a file which the Elite Dangerous game updates. It writes things like your current location, whether you've got, your handbrake on, all that kind of, all the information that utilities like EDCopilot and SRV Tracker need to do their thing. The only other thing you'll probably need to do with SRV Tracker is make sure that this is ticked, this tracking option, and that causes SRV Tracker to monitor the status file. Okay, so to create a route for EDCopilot, we open the router by clicking on this button here. This is the router. This telemetry window opens up. We don't need that, so we can just close that. So the router just creates a route as a series of waypoints, simple as that. So what we'll do, we'll give the route a name. I'm currently parked at I think it's the Canon installation. So this can be my Canon installation time trial. And then if we go to the waypoint editor, so what I need to do is create a series of waypoints, and it is really easy to do this with SRV Tracker. Let's just jump into the game. All we need to do is basically drive to where we want each waypoint to be. So I'm going to have my start line be right on this little grey platform here, and then switch back to SRV Tracker's router, hit this button, which is add current location as waypoint. Bang, there we go, that's our first waypoint. I'm going to call that start. Doesn't really matter what you call them, but I quite like to name them a little bit. So that's start. Okay, back to the game. Drive to where we want the next waypoint to be, which is just about here, behind these barrels. And then click this button again, add current location as waypoint. We can rename that. I'll call that waypoint 1. Sorry, back here, one other thing I wanted to show you. So each waypoint is basically a circle. So it's got its coordinates, which we just set by placing a point. And it's got this radius. So for a start line, something like 25 meters is a pretty decent radius. If you were making a start line that was on a very small platform and you wanted to make sure that people were exactly on that platform, you might need to make that radius smaller. Or it might be in a larger area where you don't care so much where they are, and you could make that a bit more generous. The waypoint behind these barrels because I want to make sure that people are going to come this side of these barrels and not the other side, I'm going to make that a little bit more restrictive and leave that as 20 meters. Okay, let's carry on. So my next waypoint is I'm going to have people drive around here and then cut under here. So we'll have a waypoint about here. This is quite a large area. I don't really care what line people take through this bit. So for this waypoint, I'm going to make that 30-meter radius. And then we'll have them come over here, around here. And again, we'll have another waypoint here, 30-meter radius. And then the next waypoint back this way. Basically going to have them drive back the way they came, go back behind these barrels. So a waypoint about here. Again, make this one a little bit more restrictive so they can't cheat and go the wrong side of the barrels. And then the finish line will be here. In fact, what we'll do is we'll put the finish line pretty much exactly where we started on this little panel here. About there. There we go. So we add one more waypoint, and that is finish. And again, we'll make that same size as the start line. We'll make that 25. The other thing you can do with SRV Tracker is you can check your waypoints. So if I highlight waypoint 1 and click this little button, target currently selected location, then that pops up this tracking window. You can see this sort of mark here. You can click on that to drag and position this window where you want it. And the other thing you'll need to do is click this little pin window topmost, and that makes sure that when I switch back to Elite, it stays on top of the Elite Dangerous window, which is running borderless in this instance, or you can run it windowed. Okay, so that's showing the heading to my waypoint 1, and it's showing the distance. So I can just check that if somebody tries to come this side, that is 26 meters away from my waypoint, so that won't trigger. I set the radius of this one at 20 meters, so they would definitely need to be the other side of that barrel, which is what I want. So you can do that with each of your waypoints. Oh, I didn't show you how to change it. If you wanted to change the waypoint, I won't, but suppose I wanted to make the waypoint be here instead. Again, park where you want it to be. Go back to the router, select the waypoint that you're editing, and then there's this little pen icon next to the location of the waypoint. Click that. You can see the coordinates here. You can type in coordinates manually if you want to do it that way, or you can just use this use current location button, which will overwrite the coordinates with my current location instead and update this waypoint. Okay, so there's my route. What I now need to do is click this save icon, and we're going to save this route as an ED route file. I've already done this previously, but there we go. We're going to save this as Canon tutorial ED route. Okay. At that point, we're kind of done with SRV Tracker, so we can close that down. And instead, what we want to do is we want to bring up EDCopilot now. So here we are in EDCopilot, and what we want to do is under Places, Time Trials, we want to click this little pen icon, And there's an option here to convert an SRV Tracker root file to time trial format. So we click on that. Actually, before I do that, sorry, I'm just going to cancel. I muted EDCopilot for the first bit of this video, but I'll just turn it back on.
I'm here. All systems optimal. Except for the pilot. That could use an upgrade if you ask me.
Harsh. Right, let's click that little edit button again. Convert SRV Tracker root file to time trial format. So we click that, we find the file that we've just saved, and we load it.
Processing the root file now. Root file converted and saved as Canon installation.timetrial.txt, snakehead.
Thanks. Right. So EDCopilot's converted that for me. Let's just close this window. Oops. So if I go back to my desktop now and have a look where I saved that file. So this was the ED root file that I created with SRV Tracker, and EDCopilot's basically converted it to this. Now what I've done is I've made a version, an RTF version, so I can put some stuff in bold, just to save a bit of time. So we open that file. You'd open the text file, and basically everything in this file. So this file has been generated by EDCopilot converting that SRV Tracker file, and there's some header information about the event itself here, and then each of my waypoints has its own little block in the file. Waypoint, 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 and there's the end waypoint. And you can see each sort of block is a bunch of settings, and then after each setting there's a comment which Razafrag has added to try and explain what this particular setting is all about. So what I'll do is I'll go down the settings that I've emboldened here, because these are the things I've had to fill in order to finish setting up this time trial. So the event ref, every time trial needs a unique reference. It should just be a sort of short, some sort of short coded reference. The conversion from SRV Tracker, it will generate one for you, but I just like to replace that with something of my own. So typically the name of the time trial in bold and maybe a number or something. This event state we'll come back to. It's set to author by default, and what that means is that only you can see this time trial for now. The event name here, this was converted directly from the name I gave to my root in SRV Tracker. So the first thing you'll definitely need to fill in is this short description. And that's basically the brief description of your time trial that appears when you select it in EDCopilot. So, you know, maybe give people a clue as to what's involved, whether it's how many laps there are, perhaps what the terrain is like, or what sort of distance we're talking about. You know, just a little bit of information about what your time trial is all about. The next thing you're probably going to need to fill in is the game type. I think by default when you convert an SRV Tracker route it specifies Horizons, so I've changed this to Odyssey. If you have a time trial that's basically at a surface base or involves surface terrain, then you really must specify whether it's intended for use in Odyssey or Horizons, because the terrain's very different in the two. If it's a space-based race, then you can probably set it to both and allow people in either Odyssey or Horizons to have a go at it. Right, the next setting is race type. It's already set that to SRV. There's a bunch of settings here that you can fill in. You can set things like restrictions, so you can make it that people can't do repair synthesis, or that they're only allowed to have one pip in engines, or that kind of thing. And you can specify penalties, so a 30-second time penalty for repairing your ship if you're not supposed to. I'm leaving all that blank for this time trial. So then we come to the section on the start, which is my first waypoint effectively. So it's a good idea to fill in the system. I think you have to, actually, so that EDCopilot knows which system you're supposed to be when you hit this waypoint. I've also filled in the name of the station this is taking place at. This is kind of so when you arrive at this system in Super Cruise, EDCopilot can direct you to where your time trial is. So it'll sort of say, you know, the start line for the time trial is near the Canon installation. and it'll also use this body info, which the conversion from SRV Tracker is filled in automatically, so it'll say it's on Laxac A1. These are the coordinates that we got from SRV Tracker. Those won't need changing. That's the radius of my circle. There's some other things you can fill in. So the start orientation instruction is really useful. So SRV Tracker will, EDCopilot will guide people to where the start line is, but it's handy if you tell them which direction they're supposed to be facing. There's nothing worse than starting a time trial facing the wrong way, and then when you release the handbrake, immediately you realize you're pointing in the wrong direction. So I usually include a start direction. It includes a heading. It says, you should be facing either something that's obvious, like a building, you should be facing the triangular building or whatever, or a heading's a good idea. You can give some other instructions. So there's a start instruction where if you have got restrictions, like you're not allowed repairs, or you've got to have a certain number of pips in engines, then you can give instructions about that there. I'm not going to do that for this race. There's an enter system instruction, so this is read out if somebody flies to the system where your time trial is from another system, and it'll just tell them something. You could include instructions like fly to the 5th moon of the 3rd planet. I don't know, whatever sort of flavor text you want to guide them to where the start line is. This is the most important thing probably in this file, which is the next instruction. Each waypoint has a next instruction, except for the end. And those are the instructions that will be read out to guide people to where the next waypoint is. So you can be imaginative, but make sure it's, descriptive. And I tinker with these for ages. So each waypoint has a next instruction. Things like this: bear right around the next corner and aim for the gap between the 2 slope-sided buildings. Those kind of things. Remember that this will be read out when they've hit this waypoint. So it's all about guiding them from this waypoint to the next one, and so on for each waypoint down to the end. There are some instructions you can fill in for the end. You can, EDCopilot does a pretty good job of the automated end messages, so you can do things like, congratulations, pour yourself a drink or something, if you want to alter the flavor text of these end instructions. You can see there's all sorts of other settings you can fill in. I won't go into them in detail, but you can set things like altitude limits and speed limits, and these are sort of being updated constantly. So there's all sorts of ways you can tweak your time trial to give it a bit more character. Once you've edited all these bits in, once you've filled all these bits in, you basically save the file back, and then we go back to the game. Open up EDCopilot again, click this edit button again in the time trials section, and this time we're going to import that definition file. So Canon tutorial, I think it was that one. I'm giving it 2 different names now.
Processing the time trial definition, Commander.
And then
there were errors with the time trial definition for event, Canon tutorial. See the voice log for details.
Okay, I'm going to assume that's a typo and just plow on, pretend that didn't happen. So then what you have to do is click this refresh button, this little recycling icon. And that will refresh this list, and your time trial will appear, hopefully at the top, because you'll be at the location where it is. And if we click on that, there's the description that I put in.
Ravenoff is online.
This list will be empty to start with because you haven't run it yet. I've already run it once to do a test run. But at this point, we probably want to just give it a go. So let's click the play button.
We need to move within 25 meters of the start location to begin, sir. Refer to directions on the guidance computer.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll close this EDCopilot window. If I can. I often have a lot of trouble at this point closing that window. There we go. So at this point, really, I just want to test that my time trial works.
Commander Chaos is online. We're in position to begin. Make sure the distance on the guidance computer shows 25 meters or less.
Okay, so
You should be on the raised platform facing a heading of approximately 160 degrees. Put on your handbrake to signal you are ready.
so you can see that orientation instruction is handy to let people know which way they're supposed to be facing before they put the handbrake on.
Handbrake is on. Stuff about pit restrictions, etc. The time trial will commence when you take the handbrake off.
I left that in bit so that you can hear that. That's where it would tell you about any pit restrictions or penalties. Okay, let's go.
And we're off. The first waypoint is behind the two barrel-like containers that you should be able to see in front of you. They're right around the next corner and aim for the gap between the two slope-sided buildings.
Just try and take a typical line while you're testing this.
Swing left, then right through a similar gap in the next pair of buildings. Loop right around this building and head back to the first waypoint behind the two barrels.
You might want to give it a few test runs and try and cheat, try and cut a few corners and make sure that the waypoints don't trigger.
They're right past these barrels and race back to the starting platform. Get a move on, Commander. This is the final leg. You completed the time trial in 59.52 seconds. Oh, very well done, Commander. You are top of the leaderboard. You beat your previous personal best for this event by 1.921 second.
And there you have it. We've just created a time trial for EDCopilot. One thing I should just show you quickly. Let's just bring that definition file back up again. So this thing, this event state, this author, as I said, as long as it's set to author, only you can see it. When you think it's ready for testing by others, what you can do is set it, change it from author to alpha. And there is an alpha testing group, myself included, but a whole bunch of other people as well. And I guess if you post in the Discord, then we can have a go at it and tell you if we see any issues with it. Once you're completely happy with your time trial and want everyone else to be able to see it, then when you change it to alpha, you need to re-import it, like we did the first time. And then when you're really happy with it, you change it to prod, save it and import it again, at which point it will clear the leaderboard and make that time trial available to everyone to have a go at. And that's it. I look forward to seeing lots of lovely new time trials in EDCopilot soon. Thank you, Commanders. Have a good day.